Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I used to be a police officer in a small town before I had to retire due to an injury. This story happened during one of my last shifts, and it still makes my blood boil thinking about it. I've been working for our small police department for about 8 years. We only had 5 or 6 officers on duty at any given time, which meant each of us covered huge areas. My beat was mainly the rural parts and the county highway that cut through our little town. That afternoon was beautiful with clear skies, light traffic, perfect weather for catching speeders on the highway. I was parked in my usual spot when my radio suddenly came to life with something that made my heart skip a beat. The dispatcher announced that all units needed to be on the lookout for a possible kidnapping in progress. She described a white minivan with a specific license plate and mentioned the driver was a female with short blonde hair. I immediately pulled up my computer to check for more details. What I read made my stomach drop. Multiple people had called saying they saw a young kid in the back of a van holding up a sign that read, "Help, I've been kidnapped. Call 911." The callers said the kid's hands looked like they were tied together. The reported location was way outside my patrol area, so all I could do was alert other officers and sheriff deputies who were already searching for the vehicle. For the next 10 minutes, everything was quiet on my end. Then my radio crackled again. The dispatcher reported another call about the possible kidnapping. The vehicle was now traveling south on County Highway 123, heading straight into my patrol area. My heart started racing. They were coming right toward me. When I waited, 3 more calls came in from different drivers who had seen the same thing, a little kid holding up that terrifying sign. This was getting real fast. Our highway is pretty flat so you can see for miles with binoculars. Sure enough, I spotted the white van in the distance. When it passed my position, I could clearly see a blonde woman driving and a small figure pressed against the back window of the van. I didn't pull out immediately. If this was a real kidnapping, I didn't want to spook the driver and start a high-speed chase. I was completely alone, and situations like this require backup. So I waited until she was about 2 miles away, then pulled out and followed from a safe distance. Luckily, there was a highway patrol station nearby, and they'd heard my call for assistance. Just when we passed the road leading to their station, I saw 4 state trooper vehicles pull out behind me. I fell back and let them take the lead in case this turned into a chase. We discussed our approach over the radio. Should we do a regular traffic stop or go full felony stop? Given the serious nature of a potential kidnapping, we decided on the latter. All 5 of us spread across the 4 lanes of traffic. We hit our lights and sirens simultaneously. Instead of pulling over to the shoulder like a normal person would, the driver slammed on her brakes and stopped right in the middle of the highway. We positioned our vehicles for maximum cover in case of a shootout and got out with weapons drawn. I ordered the driver to exit the vehicle and keep her hands visible. That's when she started screaming that it was all a joke. But we weren't listening to her explanations yet. The lead trooper kept giving commands, telling her to walk backward toward the sound of his voice and not to stop until he said so. Then he ordered her to get on the ground. She complied and was cuffed. Next, we ordered out what we thought was a female passenger, turned out to be her 13-year-old daughter. Then 4 more kids from the back seats, all under 16. Each one was ordered out at gunpoint and cuffed for everyone's safety. Finally, 2 troopers cleared the vehicle, while another trooper and I got to the little boy in the back. He was crying his eyes out, terrified. We put him in the back of a patrol car and gave him some space from his supposed kidnappers. The whole time, the driver and her daughter kept yelling that it was just a joke and that the boy was her son and the girl's brother. They said they couldn't believe we were taking it so seriously. After everyone was secured in separate vehicles, we started getting answers. The female trooper was great with kids. She got the little boy a stuffed dinosaur and a snack, then gently asked him what happened. That's when we learned the truth. This woman and her teenage daughter thought it would be hilarious to put the 6-year-old in the back of their packed van with a fake kidnapping sign while someone recorded other drivers' reactions. They'd been doing this prank all day across multiple counties. I talked to the other passengers, all teenagers, and confirmed that this was mainly the mother's and older daughter's idea. After consulting with the county district attorney, we were told to release the 4 teenage passengers with no charges, give the daughter a juvenile citation for inducing panic, and arrest mom on felony charges. I opened the back door of my patrol car to talk to her. She immediately asked why I wasn't taking the handcuffs off so she could sign her ticket. I told her it wasn't that simple and that she was in much more trouble than a simple ticket. I explained she was going to be charged with several felonies. That's when she completely lost it. She screamed that it was just a joke and that she said she couldn't believe nobody could take a joke anymore. She kept yelling that it was a joke and demanded I uncuff her or she would have her husband sue me for unlawful detention. I started reading her Miranda rights while she sobbed, fake tears, mind you, and kept saying that it was just a joke over and over. After finishing the Miranda warning, I asked if she understood her rights and if she was willing to talk to me. She told me to get lost. I shut the door and let her wait for the transport vehicle. By then, her husband had arrived to collect the kids and the van. When we explained what happened, he just shook his head and said this wasn't the first time she'd done stupid stuff like this. It was just the first time she'd been caught, and he'd warned her before that something like this would happen. 10 minutes later, the transport van arrived and took her away. I went back to my quiet afternoon of catching speeders. She was charged with 7 counts of inducing panic, 6 counts of felony child endangerment, 1 for each kid in the vehicle because her joke forced us to conduct a dangerous felony stop, and 1 count of having an unrestrained child since she'd put her 6-year-old son in the cargo area of the van instead of one of the older, taller kids who wouldn't fit well. Her husband told us later that she got convicted on all charges and had to serve 6 months in county jail, plus pay thousands of dollars in fines and court costs. I'm 30 years old and spent 6 years in the Army before getting out to pursue nursing school. During my time in service, I learned to be pretty self-reliant, especially when it comes to taking care of my stuff. I do about 90% of the maintenance on my vehicles myself. Sure, I don't have every fancy tool out there, but I can handle most basic repairs and upkeep. So here's what happened. I just gotten back from a 6-month deployment where my Toyota pickup truck had been sitting in storage the whole time. You know how it is when a vehicle sits for months, things need attention. I spent the better part of a weekend going through everything. Changed the fan belts, swapped out air filters, put in new spark plugs, did a complete oil change, replaced both oil and fuel filters, flushed the radiator, checked the battery connections, and even switched from winter tires to summer ones. Living where I do, you need proper seasonal gear or you're asking for trouble. The only thing left on my list was adding some injector treatment to the fuel tank, filling up, and getting the tires balanced. Now here's the funny part. I was dressed up that day because I had other plans afterward. We're talking heels, dress slacks, silk blouse, nice jacket, hair pulled back in a professional bun. I looked like I'd stepped out of a boardroom, not someone who'd just spent the weekend elbow deep in engine maintenance. I dropped my truck off at the tire shop and asked for a simple tire balance. The guy at the counter told me it would take about an hour, which was perfect since I had some errands nearby. But when I was getting ready to leave, something through their big front window caught my eye. I could see 2 mechanics pulling my tires off, which was normal, but then I noticed a third guy, the one who'd taken my keys, sitting in my driver's seat with a little notepad, writing stuff down. That seemed weird for a tire balance, so I decided to stick around and see what was happening. After about 10 minutes, the guy with the notepad came back inside and walked straight over to me with this serious expression. He told me he needed to talk about my vehicle because during their free safety assessment, they had found some major issues that needed immediate attention. I asked him what safety assessment he was talking about since I'd only requested a tire balance and what kind of issues he'd found. He proceeded to rattle off a long list of problems. My fan belt was completely shot, I was overdue for an oil change, my radiator needed flushing, both my fuel and oil filters were clogged, my brake pads were worn down to nothing, and my alignment was so bad it had destroyed my tires. He claimed this was a serious safety hazard. I just stared at him. Every single thing he'd mentioned was something I'd either checked or completely replaced in the past 2 days. But here's the thing, I watched him the whole time and he never once opened my hood. I asked him how exactly he checked all those things without opening the hood. He got defensive and told me he'd been doing this for 15 years and knew what to look for. Then he dropped the real bomb. He apologized but said he couldn't release my vehicle to me in this condition because it was just too dangerous. He claimed they were looking at about $3,700 in repairs to make it roadworthy again, and it could cost even more since my Toyota was technically an import and parts could be hard to find. I asked him to clarify he couldn't release my truck that I owned. He confirmed that was correct, saying it was a liability issue and he couldn't let me drive something so unsafe. He then asked if there was someone I could call to discuss this kind of major repair, or if I needed a ride home. I told him I wanted to speak with his manager. Of course, he told me that the manager was unfortunately out for the day, but could call me tomorrow to discuss payment options. I asked for a few minutes to think about it and walked out to the parking lot. Instead of panicking like he probably expected, I called the sheriff's department and explained the situation. The dispatcher told me they'd have an officer there in 15 minutes to help sort things out. I walked back inside with my sweetest smile and told the mechanic I had good news. I explained that I called a friend who knew about cars and he was coming over to look at the assessment with me. I asked if I could get a written copy of the repair list and quote. The mechanic's face lit up and he said that was very smart of me. He happily handed me a detailed list with all the supposed problems and his signature at the bottom, plus his business card so I could contact him about scheduling the work. About 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy walked through the front door. The mechanic's face went white. The deputy asked if I was the one who'd called about a vehicle issue. I confirmed I was and explained that this gentleman was refusing to return my truck unless I paid for $3,700 in repairs. I handed over the written estimate he'd provided. The deputy looked over the paperwork, then asked the mechanic if he had any certification or legal authority to impound private vehicles for safety violations. When the mechanic stammered that he didn't but tried to justify his actions, the deputy cut him off and told him he needed to return my truck immediately. He explained that what the mechanic was doing constituted theft. Just then, guess who walked through the door? The manager who was supposedly out for the day. His timing couldn't have been better when he got to watch his employee getting handcuffed and read his rights for attempted theft and fraud. The confused manager asked what was going on. The deputy explained that his employee had tried to extort money from me by refusing to return my vehicle. The manager looked mortified. After the deputy left with the now former employee, the manager apologized over and over. He personally balanced my tires for free and threw in a complete vehicle inspection, a real one this time just to make sure there were no actual problems. Turns out my truck was in perfect condition just like I knew it was. When I got home, I realized the guy never even asked for any proof that the truck needed work. He just assumed that because I was dressed professionally and looked like I didn't know anything about cars, I'd be an easy target. He picked the wrong veteran to mess with. My twin brothers and I have been best friends since we were kids. We're practically inseparable, born just 3 days apart, which makes our bond even stronger. At 35, I'm like the sister they never had, and they've always been my protective big brothers, even though I'm technically older by those 3 days. My brother has been dating his fiancée for 2 years now, and she's wonderful. She fits into our tight-knit group perfectly, and we all adore her. When they got engaged 6 months ago, she immediately asked me to be her maid of honor. I was over the moon. This woman was going to be my sister-in-law, and having me stand beside her on the most important day of her life meant everything to me. The wedding is planned for the weekend before Halloween, and it's going to be a beautiful family affair. I'm 6 months pregnant with my third child, and my 2 little ones are going to be ring bearers. My husband is in the wedding party too. Everything was perfect until my other brother started dating Karen. Karen is 28 and comes from serious money. She's an only child who's never been told no in her entire life, and it shows. From the moment she entered our group 3 months ago, she has made it her mission to insert herself into everything, especially the wedding planning. At first, it was small things. She'd make comments about the flower arrangements or suggest changes to the menu, but then she started getting bolder. She began approaching the bride privately, suggesting that maybe having a pregnant bridesmaid wasn't the best look for the photos. She actually used the phrase ruin the aesthetic multiple times. Thank God my future sister-in-law has a backbone. She shut Karen down every single time, explaining that our friendship meant more to her than any photo. She even talked to both my brothers about Karen's behavior. My brother, who's getting married, was furious and told Karen to back off. But my other brother just kept saying Karen was trying to help and that we should give her a chance. The situation came to a head last night when I invited both couples over for dinner. I was wearing a flowy maternity dress that I thought looked nice. The moment Karen walked into my house, she looked me up and down and laughed. Then she said I looked like a beached whale in that dress. The room went completely silent. My husband's jaw dropped. The bride looked mortified. Even my brother, who's usually defending Karen, looked uncomfortable. I felt my face burning with anger. I'm pregnant, not dying. I'm growing a human being, and this woman had the audacity to insult me in my own home. I told her that my belly would be gone in 3 months, but she'd still be stuck with that ugly personality forever. She asked me what I had just said to her, acting all shocked and offended. I repeated myself clearly and then told her I needed her to leave my house immediately. That's when Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about how I was jealous of her relationship, how I was trying to steal my brother from her, and how I was a terrible person. She called me a boyfriend stealing which didn't even make sense. She yelled that I couldn't kick her out and that this was so unfair. I told her that since this was my house, I absolutely could make her leave, and I told her to go right now. My brother looked torn between staying and going with his girlfriend, but Karen grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the door. When she left, she shouted that I shouldn't expect an apology from her because I was the one who was wrong. After they left, the rest of us had a great evening. My future sister-in-law kept apologizing for Karen's behavior, but I told her it wasn't her fault. My other brother and his fiancée were completely supportive. Today my brother texted me demanding I apologize to Karen. He said I took a low blow and that I was being unfair to his girlfriend. He claimed she was just trying to be helpful with the wedding planning and that I misunderstood her comment about my appearance. I was furious. I texted him back explaining exactly what happened and how his girlfriend has been trying to get me kicked out of the wedding for months. I told him that if anyone owed an apology, it was Karen, for insulting me in my own home and for trying to interfere with a wedding that has nothing to do with her. But here's where the story gets interesting. Apparently, Karen didn't just complain to my brother about me. She also went crying to her daddy about the mean pregnant lady who kicked her out of a party. And daddy decided to take action. See, Karen's father owns a pretty successful catering company in town. Guess who was hired to cater my brother's wedding? That's right, daddy's company. 2 days after our dinner party disaster, my brother and his fiancée got a call from the catering company. They were told that due to scheduling conflicts, they could no longer provide services for the wedding. This was less than 2 months before the big day. My future sister-in-law was devastated. She called me crying, explaining how they'd already paid a deposit and now had to scramble to find a new caterer. That's when she told me about Karen's father's company. I was seeing red. This woman had not only insulted me in my home, but was now trying to ruin my brother's wedding out of spite. But I had a plan. I happen to work in event planning, and I have connections throughout the industry. Within 24 hours, I had found them a better caterer at a lower price. But more importantly, I made some phone calls about Karen's father's business practices. Turns out canceling contracts for personal vendettas isn't just unethical, it's potentially illegal depending on the terms. I connected my brother and his fiancée with a lawyer friend who specializes in contract disputes. The lawyer sent a letter to the catering company explaining that they were in breach of contract and demanding not only a full refund, but also damages for the stress and additional costs of finding a replacement vendor on short notice. Karen's father panicked. He called my brother directly, apologizing profusely and offering to honor the original contract at half the price. But it was too late. They'd already booked the new caterer, and honestly, nobody wanted to deal with Karen's family anymore. Word spread quickly through our town's tight-knit event planning community about what happened. Karen's father's company started losing clients who didn't want to risk having their events canceled over personal drama. When it comes to Karen and my brother, let's just say their relationship didn't survive the fallout. When he found out that his girlfriend's family had tried to sabotage his own brother's wedding, he finally saw her for who she really was. They broke up 2 weeks later. The wedding was absolutely perfect. I stood proudly as maid of honor, 6 months pregnant and glowing. My kids were adorable as ring bearers, and the new caterer's food was amazing, much better than what Karen's father would have provided. Karen didn't attend the wedding, obviously. She moved back in with her parents after the breakup and was telling everyone who would listen that I had ruined her relationship and destroyed her family's business. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.